Okay, hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this first Coaching Conversations webinar. Really pleased to have so many of you here with us tonight. I believe more are going to join us hopefully as well. So, some of you are recognising some familiar names. Some of you will have either worked quite closely with BC, or you'll have been part of the webinars that we did earlier in the year when lockdown started, and we've had a bit of a pause. We've taken some feedback, and we've now really pleased to offer you this monthly opportunity to connect in with fellow coaches, hopefully learn a little bit and share some of your best practice. So first up tonight, we're talking philosophy, behaviour and reflection, three huge topics which you could go to a university and do entire semesters on. You could read lots of books. You probably could do entire doctorates on each of these areas, and we're going to briefly cover the fundamentals of each area, but then really give you an opportunity to discuss these areas in breakout rooms with other coaches that you may not have met before, but the idea is that you just share your experiences, share your vulnerabilities, share your best practice, and hopefully together we'll all learn something new tonight. So absolutely delighted to be joined by three of my colleagues tonight. First up, Keith Sharp from the Great Britain Cycling Team. We've got Catherine Ruffley, who's the Coaching and Clubs Officer for the Central Region, and then Patricia Quirk, who is the Lead Development Officer for British Cycling Education. And how tonight's going to work, so you're going to hear a little bit from each of the speakers tonight, a little bit of information, out to a breakout room to discuss something. There's obviously chat, so hopefully you're all Zoom familiar by now, after so many months of doing this kind of thing. So within the chat, we'd really love to see you engage and share. You can share anything, but your favorite books about coaching, and we talk about philosophy. Have you read any books on philosophy? Have you seen some videos on YouTube that you found really interesting? So this is an opportunity to really connect with the coaching community. We've got a couple of polls, just one to find out who's in the room tonight, and then we've got another couple at the end just to see what you thought about the delivery and how we can shape it for the future. So I'm just going to launch that first poll before we introduce Keith. So the first one is just about your highest cycling qualification, just so we can see the split of who's in the room tonight. So I'll give you good 20 seconds to answer. I think, if I recall from the previous webinars that we did in spring, the most popular one was level 2 discipline, and that is actually the case again now, which is great. So whatever level you are, or even if you're the one person who's not a cycling coach, absolutely fine. Welcome tonight, and hopefully we've got something that all of you can take out of it. So I'm going to hand over to Keith to discuss firstly the coaching components of British cycling, or the Great Britain Cycling Team. Keith, welcome tonight. Thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Cool. Thank you, Robbie. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're well. I trust you can hear me. Robbie, if you can't, just wave at me and I will rectify. Yeah, thank you for joining. I'm responsible for coaching and leadership development within the GB Cycling Team. And in the last 2 years, we've created something called the GBCT Cycling Component. So I just wanted to share with you that tonight. I thought it might be of interest to you guys that are listening in. I'm really open to questions. I'm really open to any discussion or feedback. And if you think we've missed something, then do let us know. Just to give you some background, we started out by asking all the coaches in the team, what does it take to be a world-class coach in the GB Cycling Team? And it was literally a blank piece of paper. So we did this by a reverse pyramid. So as an individual, we got people to answer on a blank sheet of paper. Then we paired them up into 2s, 4s, 8s, etc., until we had the whole group discussing and prioritizing what they thought was the most important things to being a coach in our team and to be the best coach that we could be. There was some really good conversation. Some things were really agreeable, some things were less agreeable, but it was a good discussion. Once we completed it, we got them to rank them in order of priority and what they thought was most important and what we thought was not necessarily least important, but just what was important to them and what was really meaningful to them. Coincidentally, what's really nice is it flowed in the way that they're numbered on the page, which then made it really easy for us to come up with the three areas: coaching heart, coaching specifics, coaching responsibilities. So how does it play out? How is it helping us? For me, the important thing here, it's a really small thing, and for me, small details really do matter. The way that it's really simplified and really presented quite accessibly was a really important thing to role model, because if it was just a random diagram that wasn't very attractive or wasn't very pretty, it would have been harder for some of the coaches to engage with. So for me, making it as accessible as possible was really important. It's also interactive, so when coaches get it, they can click on each of the different components. There's a bit of background behind each of the components. So for example, if we went into, I don't think we can do this on the slides that we've got up tonight, but if we went into number one, it would break it down in what it means for the team, what it means for us, and then there'd be bullet points under each of those areas. So it's just opened up really good conversation. And how do they help us? They underpin everything that I do within the team. Practice is a very underrated word for me in adulthood, and these components allow us to be mindful and keep track of all of the components that make up our individual roles on a day-to-day basis. So it recognizes and acknowledges the broad role that a coach has. It's really helpful to see from a coach's perspective that their role isn't just whether it's standing trackside, whether it's standing at the bottom of a BMX ramp, wherever it might be, on the road, in a car. There's a much more to the coach's role than just the actual delivery of the session within the couple of hours that they might be doing sessions. There's a whole procedure behind that and a whole process behind that. And these components help magnify that for the coach, but also for other people in the team to understand that it is a very, very busy and broad role. So it just helps recognize the intricacies there. It allows us to have really good, honest conversations. So how we use it is we get all of the coaches to profile themselves. And I think you've got the profile on the next slide, Robbie.
Yeah.
And it's just a really simple profile. You would have seen similar things to this yourselves. If you felt like you wanted to take a picture of this slide now, and you'd easily be able to profile yourself on how well and clear is your philosophy and values, how strong do you feel you are at relationships and communication skills. In terms of your performance planning for the riders you work with, how strong is your ability to plan and really think about, right, what is the outcome that I want our riders to have that I'm working with, and how well is the planning supporting that? It's really an easy conversation. Once the coaches have profiled that individually, we then have a discussion with myself and with their colleagues, and also we're going to extend that to riders as well. So there's a real 360 element of feedback and opinion. You can't argue with opinion, it's just someone else's thoughts. So we're just really trying to encourage that open conversation, open dialogue, to then springboard development off the back of it. It's allowed us to, as I said, it's allowed us to have really good, open, honest conversations. And that's been some outcomes of this kind of thing. Is we've sent people to speakers clubs to improve their confidence in the art of delivery and the way that they coach. We've had dedicated sessions on body language. We've run book clubs and debates around how to give and receive feedback, and how to create a culture, and how to educate riders in order to give and receive feedback better. We've created specific training time to ride the motorbike on the velodrome. It's quite a skill, coming in at speed for the sprinters, for example. So that is discipline specific knowledge. We've set out and updated our diversity training, and we've got now, instead of standalone sessions every so often, we've got a really long-term progressive diversity training strategy that links across the cycle that we work in. Obviously we work in 4-year cycles, and then we've also increased the numbers of sort of coaches that are shadowing across discipline, to make sure that when they're looking at sessions, they're not just watching the session in the moment, they're also considering these other components. And we get people to focus on maybe the 3 that they're looking to work on at the minute, or the 3 that they're haven't worked on for a while. It just depends on what's individually required for each coach. Helps us push boundaries on what we're doing, provides a formal framework for us to take stock, and it's just seems to have been really a simple way to connect and open up the development conversation for our coaches, because regardless of where we are in the pathway, we can always get better and we can always improve. Thanks, Robbie.
Brilliant, Keith, and hopefully people picked up on the amount of times you discussed the conversation. I think one of the interesting things I've found from engaging, working with Keith over the past few months is the amount of work you're doing to really get coaches to open up to, and I think you described it as share vulnerabilities and be open about who you are and what you're doing. It's not easy for people to do. How did coaches find that initially, and how have they developed into it? Have you seen a change?
I've definitely seen a change, and clearly we've got quite a large group of coaches. So some of them, as you can imagine, in a large group, some of them you've got people that really embrace it. You've got others that are a bit slower to embrace, and it is a bit like a peloton. Sometimes you've got those up the front, and sometimes you've got those at the back. But if we move as one and we are one team, then we can generally see that people are getting better, and therefore it encourages others to do things as well. So yeah, we're definitely not at the end point, but we're definitely improving, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully you can see how much Keith's approach has influenced what we're doing now. This is obviously coaching conversations. You're going to have the opportunity to connect with other coaches shortly. Keith, I'm sure there's going to be loads of questions for you, so do keep an eye on the chat. If you do have any conversations specific for Keith around the coaching components of the Great Britain Cycling Team, now's your opportunity to ask. He might not be on the next one, so do take the opportunity whilst you have it. But I'm going to just cover a couple of slides just talking about that number one at the top. Number one, remember about that process that they went through, about engaging with the coaches, what's important, what do we need to do, and about that philosophy and values that are going to influence your practice and how you are and how you're contributing to the team. A little bit later, which draws on a little bit about relationships, communications, and that continuous learning and development in terms of having a solid reflective practice a part of your ongoing coaching practice. So firstly, we start off with, I guess, an assumption, a statement that philosophy informs behaviour. Now, what do we mean by philosophy? We'll come to shortly, but the overview is it's about values and beliefs. So your values and beliefs will inform your behaviour. Some people think behaviour is part of your philosophy. That's absolutely fine, but it informs your values and beliefs will inform your behaviour. Your behaviour will impact your practice, and reflection will help you to understand and develop your practice, your behaviours, and understand better your philosophy. So in terms of philosophy being values and beliefs, this is where philosophy is really, really personal. And it's not always the easiest thing to do, either by yourself or with talking to other people, in terms of opening up to somebody about what are your values and beliefs and where do they come from. It's very, very personal. Everybody has different backgrounds, different families with different outlooks on life, different educational undertakings, different work experience, different life experience. And these all help to build and construct your philosophy over time. So it might be something that is solid and that never moves. Some people who've got really strong values that starts at the home from when they were young. Some people, it might be evolving, like mine is with with my approach to coaching. So shortly, just so you're not put on the spot completely, you're going to go into a breakout room. You're going to be with around 4 or 5 other coaches, and the lucky group, one of you will get Keith. I would encourage you to find out a little bit about Keith's philosophy, and others will be with Catherine and Patricia. Do ask them. But we're going to ask you the question: what are your values and beliefs, and where do they come from? I'm going to open up and kind of share my vulnerabilities now, as it were, and just give you a little insight into my coaching philosophy. So that's me in the center. I'm sure you can see the likeness in my memoji. The 2 people at the top are mum and dad. And then I've got my sporting background, my coaching background, and then my educational background as well. So very broadly speaking, your philosophy could be a few words. It could be a single statement, a single sentence. It could be paragraphs. It's up to you how much you write. But the importance is to really drill into the detail and find out what is your philosophy and where does it come from. Mine, broadly speaking, can I'll say my philosophy, my coaching philosophy is based around empathy, passion, positivity, and challenge. Now, what do I mean about that? Well, empathy, my mum at the top, she was a teacher, reception school teacher. She, massively empathetic with the needs of children who needed development, and I think that influenced me to have a lot of empathy in my practice with the little guy who needs the most support. Now, how this influences my practice, maybe sometimes I wasn't as supportive of the person at the top who didn't need the support, who was appropriately challenged at times. Passion, whenever you see my coaching practice or you meet me on a day-to-day basis, you'll always see passion. You'll know that I'm passionate about what I do, and you know that I'm passionate about seeing development and I'm passionate about cycling and coaching too. Positivity, I haven't had the best, I came from I haven't had the best, sporting background in terms of my coaching background. Some of the experiences that I had as a youth were really quite negative. I played a lot of football, did some running, and characterized by quite a lot of abuse, in terms of people shouting it all the time, a lot of negativity, that kind of environment. And it really made me think that as a coach, I really want to be positive and give people a really worthwhile, positive experience in sport. And lastly, about challenge. So I personally don't feel I was challenged enough when I was younger, and it took me a long time to work out what I wanted to do and to find what my place was in the world. And that was going to university at 26 helped shape that, and I realised that I hadn't been challenged appropriately, and then at university, my learning started to influence how I approach coaching, and influence where I believe knowledge comes from and how it's shared. So really importantly, I empathise with people's learning needs. I really think you need to challenge them appropriately and find that point. But you're going to see that based around passion, positivity, support within my practice. So now over to you. You're going to share your values and beliefs with somebody else. Now, I don't expect this to be absolutely perfect. You're going to be with new people. You're going to zoom out to a breakout room shortly. But really just to understand, can you try to, in front of somebody else, articulate your values and beliefs and identify why you hold those values or beliefs? Really, really important. Now, this isn't writing a coaching philosophy. That's going to be after. That's going to be a challenge after for you to go away and try and articulate your coaching philosophy a little bit more. So how it's going to work, when you go to your breakout room, the person who is first in the alphabet is going to be the chair. You've got 10 minutes. I want to see everybody have at least 2 minutes to articulate the values and beliefs, or 1 minute each, and then maybe 5 minutes for discussion. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms. You should see something pop up that says join the room. So click on, hopefully you can see that. So click on join the room. I can see people leaving. Fabulous. Okay, just a few remaining. Helen, Jackie, Norman, Chester, you can join your rooms. There should be something that's popped up on your screen saying join room.
I wonder if we're getting anybody else. Oh, we've got Rob as well.
Hello, how you doing? I was.
Our focus has been really on sort of the youth cycling and I think making it fun. We've made it inclusive, and keeping it fun. We sort of adopted really with the philosophy market. Mark Evans started it about 5, 6 years ago now.
6
years,
7 years. It was 6 at the awards.
So we've run it now for about 3 years, and taken on the philosophy that is to keep it fun, keep it inclusive, and so that follows my philosophy, which is actually keeping open, trying to actually engage people, and do different, or get the best out of people, rather than be the guru myself.
Yeah. So is that that's at your club, is it, or that's your personal philosophy?
Well, the club is that we run Kettering Cyclones. My personal philosophy is my work-wise, I follow is to do different. So I tend to be quite creative and about things. But from my work, I've learned that obviously it's easy to be a guru and sort of hold on to things, and actually it's better to give out and to encourage others. And so part of my work philosophy is transferred over into coaching, which is getting others to try and get the best out of them and get them to be good at cycling, and obviously support them in their success.
Brilliant. What about yourself, Gerard?
Okay. As I was saying to the group, I'm one of the coaches at Sports City Velo, Eastlands Velo. I think a few things sort of stick in my thinking. Big on giving everybody a chance and encouraging everybody to do as much as they are able to do and develop to, I suppose, the best that they can achieve. I'm not as big on using the jargon, the actual outcome goals, much more interested in the performance and the progressive goals, because I suppose that's influenced in some ways by seeing quite a few people. Obviously the club probably operates, whilst we operate in the Go Ride age category predominantly, we operate with some reasonably talented riders. Some riders choose to come to us from other locations because they see us as a stepping stone towards the pathway and Olympic gold and all the rest of it. Sadly, I see so many of those riders who make the first steps or take the first steps along those routes and then find that they are, we can be blunt here, not quite good enough, and fall down the pyramid, fall off the pyramid. And I see so many of those riders just have to give up. So I think I try to work around, it's about enjoying cycling. It's about enjoying what you do. And if that leads you to the next step, which might eventually put you on a podium in Tokyo, that's great, but only one person stands on that podium. And so a lot of my thinking and coaching, certainly at the moment, and it varies, it does vary because it depends where we are. We're probably at a bit of a milestone at the moment because the Junior Senior Academy has just been announced, and some people have perhaps had aspirations that have not achieved them. And it's sort of trying to pick up those pieces. So it's about actually trying to get people to think about what they want, what they do. You know, when I did my level 3, you have to write a coaching philosophy for that. And one of my sentences was that I think I would have succeeded if in 20 years' time I was standing at the top of the ramp at Manchester Velodrome and a mum or a dad brought a little 9-year-old kid up, and this little boy or girl was looking at the banking and looking very, very scared. And 20 years earlier, that was the mum, and I was standing at the top of the ramp. And that's the sort of philosophy that I come to. Yeah, we operate in quite a high-performance, racy environment, but the bottom line is actually giving people the skills and the joy of something to do for the rest of their life.
So yeah. Where do you think that comes from, Gerard? And Roland, you seem to have similar philosophies about kind of that enjoyment factor. Where do you think that comes from? Should we start with Roland? Is it, sorry, who's with you here? I can't see it.
This is Francesca.
I'm Francesca.
Hi, Francesca.
As far as I'm technically the youngest British cycling coach for the region.
Right, okay.
I did it. 14th birthday, where were we getting on level 1?
14th? On your 14th birthday you did level 1?
Oh yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Boom, boom.
Can't do the rest of it yet, but...
And I thought I was doing well because my daughter has literally just gone to university and done her level 2 track a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
But you've well beaten her.
Yeah, wow, that's congratulations. Well, so yeah, where does it come from then about the the enjoyment? Is that personal in terms of trying to share your love of cycling, or have you had negative experiences that you didn't want to pass on?
No, I mean, my wife says summed it up to me. I worked in IT for 40 years. I had a career, which is actually my hobby. I enjoyed computing, and I got paid to do something I enjoyed. And I think because of having so much fun, that really carried me through. And I think with cycling, knowing how much it can become a grind. I mean, even though in computing, you've got the grind because you've got to do the study, you've got to do the work. And I know that there's so much pressure, particularly as you see the Olympic team as sort of 18, 20-year-olds going to Olympics. You're saying there's a lot of pressure on them. And actually, you've got to have that fun, that basis to say you're enjoying this, so that when you get there, you actually can take the pressure rather than actually be ground down that you've got to be forced to do something because that's what you've got to do. And so I personally find it motivated me, and so I was passing that motivation on to try and keep it fun. Yes, I want them to do well, and I do at times can be a bit pushy, but yet fundamentally it is trying to keep it fun, keep them going, and get the kids to motivate themselves as opposed to the parents pushing the kids.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. When they get to that high pressure environment, Gerard, you obviously talked about that. That they can handle it. That's really important. That they have that work-life balance. They see what's really important, and they don't get too weighed down. It's tough to do. It'd be really interesting when we go into the next conversation about the behaviours that you employ to make this work. So, Gerard, what about yourself? It's that fun, that enjoyment, that support, thinking about that pathway about keeping people in the sport. Where did that come from for you?
I suppose it's because I've long been involved in cycling, pretty much all my life, I guess. And my two lads and my daughter have all been involved in cycling and have made their own choices. One of them doesn't really ride at all now. The other one is currently living it up in Italy somewhere. Because of COVID, he can work from home, as it were. And home is actually in a little chalet in Italy where he works for 3 days a week and then rides for 4 days a week. And then, my daughter also, she races, she rides. So it's passing on that enthusiasm, something that I've got a lot of to somebody else, I guess.
Yeah, brilliant. And you got that roster. I don't know, did you? No, you wouldn't have had Teo. You wouldn't have had Teo there. He's based in London, wasn't he? But you wouldn't have.
No, Teo wasn't one of ours.
No. I was thinking about the long list of people that have come through because the Yates brothers, of course, came through Sport City Velo, didn't they?
Yates brothers, Stephen Burke, Chris Lawless, who's in Ineos at the minute, and of course Jason Kenny was one of ours.
My claim to fame: beat him in a cyclocross race. Being Jason Kenny, he absolutely hammered me for the first half a lap, and then realised he's a sprinter, not a cyclocross rider. And he came third from last.
Cold and wet as well, which doesn't suit.
We're going back now. See you shortly. Okay, hello everybody, welcome back. Apologies about that. It seems like as soon as you go to a breakout room, it stops. It stops what you're sharing. So let me just get this back on. So hopefully you found that interesting. Opportunity to engage with other coaches. Certainly just want to say thanks to Roland, Francesca and Gerard, who I had a really good conversation with, and wondering about what you took away from that, what you learned from everybody else. Certainly lots of talk about fun, passion, enjoyment and passion and passing that on. So really keen just pop it in the chat now, just some things that you learned. I will say that you can message people privately. So if you want to share any of the contact details, stay in touch after this webinar, do so privately. Don't be putting your personal details on there. So okay, so we're going to talk a little bit now about coaching behaviour. So remember that philosophy forms your behaviour. So I'm going to just show you a couple of slides where we've got one is a behaviour spectrum. and doesn't have every type of behavior on there. This is sometimes called coaching styles. Styles is a little bit frowned upon in the academic literature to say you adopt a style and it's an act. It's generally categorized as behaviors, and there's behaviors that there might be a little bit of a blend and a mix. So before I go on, I'm just going to talk to Catherine roughly shortly for our. Actually, Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute, so you just need to unmute.
Hi everyone, I'm the coaching and clubs officer for the Central region, but I want to know more about how all the coaching clubs officers in all the regions can help and support you guys with your coaching values and beliefs and all the other behaviours and everything that we're speaking about tonight. So it's what sort of things we're thinking about and how it fits in with your coaching and what experiences you've had.
So, Catherine, sorry, there's a little bit of feedback here. I'm not sure if it's anything that you're going to be able to address into a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure if you've got headphones in. If you can take the headphones out and use a computer audio, or
Yep.
or put headphones in. I'm not sure what that is, but Catherine, one of the things I just wanted to understand was, so when you go to see a Go Ride club or go out into the region and see coaching at clubs, what are some of the behaviours that you observe?
Let me take these off and see if it works any better for you.
I can hear you now.
You can hear?
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, the coaching at clubs, I see all sorts of different things because different styles of coaching and different disciplines and different levels of coaching, whether it's the talent development centres or small holiday clubs or coaching in schools. There's so many different sectors of coaching that we don't all fit into just one. And I'm sure the coaches on this webinar know that, well, I don't coach the same as that person or that person. But I think that everyone is in it for a passion of cycling. And it's how do we look at what we're doing and think about how we can keep improving that and improve ourselves, our CPD and what have you.
So when we talked earlier, Catherine, you mentioned a little bit about things like behaviour management and adapting activity. Can you talk a little bit about that, just from your observations of seeing coaches and some challenges that they're facing in that regard?
I've seen all sorts of challenges. Quite often it's with parents, which I'm sure most of you have had the experience of. And it's how we deal with those parents. That's definitely something that we need to be aware of. It's dealing with issues with the kids themselves. Different kids at different ages, teenagers, and different reasons, ADHD, all sorts of different reasons why you may get different reactions from kids. And it's how we step back and deal with it as a coach and always think of them as they're people that are growing up, they've got lots going on in their minds, but while they're here, they're thinking about coaching, so we've got to focus them on that.
Yeah, and it is a challenge. Always dealing with behaviour and adapting activity is always one of those challenges. I think, one of the things we talked about, for British cycling, is maybe we've been guilty of, through some of the resources that we provide, that, expecting coaches to rely too much on them. And that means, less adaptable to think outside the box. And that's something we're reviewing. So there's also something just to support you with kind of the management and behaviour and the progression of activities and feedback is we've got an engaging riders piece on British Cycling Learning. Learning, which is available £6.99. I'll share a link on the British Cycling, in the chat shortly around that. Or Trish, if you could find the digital learning page and share that, that'd be great. We're just going to cover, just to make sure we try and stay on time, just some of the areas that are on the screen now around the behaviour spectrum. So you might have seen this before, you might have not, but generally there's often talked about a spectrum between autocratic and democratic. You're an autocratic coach, it's my way or the highway, you do as I say, and you use a lot of command and direct instruction. Or you're more like a democratic servant coach, where it's all about the rider. You're there to serve their needs and put on the practice, really involving them in their journey. There's various other types of behaviour in between, and please do contribute to the chat if you've got some examples of different styles of behaviour. One of them will be self-check, that you might be slightly autocratic in your behaviours, but you just check with the rider that they understand. You might be guided discovery, where you involve them in the process of finding the right answer through trial and error of various different things. Or laissez-faire, a bit more relaxed and putting it out to the people, as it were, about what they'd like to develop. So and using things like peer review rather than the coach having control entirely over the session. Sorry, I'm clicking on the screen, it's not coming up. So some examples, there might be poor examples just on there. I've just focused on an activity such as braking. So autocratic, it's not necessarily an autocratic command, but it's a now squeeze on your brakes with 2 fingers to come to a stop. Standard coaching kind of delivery of a key technical point. Self-check, did you manage to brake with 1 finger or 2? And then guided discovery would be around try braking with various different amounts of fingers at different times with different body weight and in different positions. Laissez-faire is empowering the learners to go away, discover the best way to perform an activity. And democratic will be asking the learners which technique they want to they'd like to practice next, or how you can be of assistance for developing something something else that that might not be braking. You then have various what's called pedagogical approaches, and it's a bit of a long word, bit of a hard word to say, but it basically means how you teach, so teaching strategies really. So there's various things along there that might relate to some of the behaviors. So in terms of being a command direct style, you might be demonstrating what you think is the right way to perform a technique. You might utilize questioning or peer review where riders feed back to each other. We might use flipped coaching, where it's more about the rider teaching you and teaching the rest of the group, utilizing things that you might find on YouTube to go away, find a clip on YouTube, come back ready to teach your friends the next week. So really flipping the coaching process on its head. Now, how does this link to philosophy? So this is where we make a really important leap. So your values and beliefs are not just your values and beliefs about about you and life. It might be about coaching, about knowledge, about reality. How do people learn, and how does that knowledge stick? And how what is the perception of coaching and who the coach is? So if you believe the coach has to be the fountain of all knowledge, that the riders come to a session to listen, to develop according to your terms, you're more likely to be termed towards the autocratic end of the spectrum and use more command and direct instruction. Now that can often be seen as a negative, if you're not being completely democratic and involving the rider. But actually there's a growing body of research about the importance of direct instruction now. So people don't know what they don't know. So you can use all kinds of democratic styles about people talking to each other. You can use questioning, all types of questioning around divergent questions, convergent questions, open, close, all that. But if a rider doesn't know the answer, if they don't know the detail that you're looking for with that, then it's not going to help them. And if you know the answer and you know something that's going to help them, then there's nothing wrong with direct instruction. And I think over previous quite a lot of the literature that's coming out at the minute is around constructivism, social constructivism, about knowledge being constructed in social settings. But actually, when we're talking about riding a bike very often is riding a bike. And if you're an expert bike rider, you've got a long history in the sport and you know how to ride a bike really well, let's not be around the bush in terms of passing that knowledge on. But actually, let's also try and involve the rider as well in terms of kind of reflecting on their performance and that flip coaching in kind of stretching the practice and keeping them engaged. It's one of the things we spoke to Catherine before, and one of the things was about riders getting bored and seeing that that dropout, particularly in the teenagers category. So it was about how do we keep them engaged, and what pedagogical approaches can we utilize to keep them engaged. But this does come back to you understanding your philosophy and the outlook of how do people learn, how are people going to stay with the practice, how are they going to develop as a cyclist. So we're going back into a breakout room now. So just want you to discuss, and I've flipped the rooms a little bit now. So you're going to be in slightly different groups. So do introduce yourself. Still need that person who's first in the alphabet to manage the room. Just really keen to understand, what behaviours do you employ most often and why? Why do you use it? Do you use direct instruction? Absolutely fine if you do, but just to, just have a discussion about why you do it. And to maybe talk about how they're influenced by your philosophy. And so one of the key things here is to understand, if we were to come to your practice, what would we see? So what behaviours would we see at your practice? So I'm going to open the rooms again. Go and join. I hope you have a really good conversation. You've got around about 10 minutes, and I hope you enjoy yourselves. So cool, can see some people joining, disappearing. Yeah, the link should be there. So Sally, are you there?
Rubbish.
Oh, the boss is coming to join
earlier
us.
in the alphabet.
Hello, hello, hello.
I was
No
just
pressure
saying,
now.
how am I earliest in the alphabet? I'm like midway through. So anyway, so I suppose I'll go first. So I was, I think it was Gerard who put in the comments about changing your styles with different riders. So if you are like kind of with a group of riders who are very new, they're not going to, like you were saying, they're not going to know the answer to the question that you're looking for. So it is got to be a bit more autocratic. Whereas performance riders, I've always gone on if they're not feeling good, there's no point making them do a stupid effort or session, because they're not going to get anything out of it. I'll be like, right, how is everyone feeling today? Okay, actually let's do a good effort, because I'd rather they get more out of the training session than it just being a waste of an hour. Or however long you've got, especially when you've got track time and it costs loads of money. So so I don't know how that would, I think it would just be very different depending on who you are, where you are, lots of things. So I don't think I really stick to any particular style.
No, that's fine. It is about that mix of behaviours. That's really important. It's different, different strokes for different folks. It's not going to be the same how the coaches that Keith Sharp is working with to grassroots coaching, working with kids on balance bikes, and that's kind of one of the really key points. That's great. So who's next?
So are you happy for me to crack on? I don't think our answer is going to be that much different. So like Joanne, I'm pretty coaching style depends on the group. You can plan for the best. You can plan for this 10 out of 10 scenario. The sun is shining, the kids can all ride bikes, etc., etc. Until you turn up to the start of that session. If it's not a group you work with regularly, I don't know what sort of coaching style or behaviour I'm going to take to that session. So this afternoon, pouring down with rain, 5 youngsters. So you start off a little bit autocratic. You might have a safety briefing. You might want to lay some ground rules. And then as you get to know your group, you change your style accordingly. If it starts going off the rails, you might bring it, you might start laying some more ground rules in, very instructional. But if they're quite receptive, then you go more to a laissez-faire, more of a democratic, demonstration route. So yeah, it's not something that's, I have an understanding of coaching styles and the behaviour spectrums, but until you get that group, and all sorts of things can affect it, environmental conditions, whether they've had a bad night's sleep, whether they've been up till 2 o'clock in the morning on the Xbox. It's half term after all. So you just don't know. So I tend to play it by ear, really.
Cool. It's good to have that flexibility. Good. And that awareness.
Yeah.
Cool. Shall I go next? You've done a lot of talking already, Robbie, so I'll give you a minute to I agree with the same. I think I'm very much a questioner is one thing. I do a lot of questioning as to so why did you do that? What are you going to do different next time, etc. So all of them kind of all fall into that. But obviously you've got to give some direction at some point. Otherwise you're not going to be getting the basic coaching across them, especially if it's skill based. But if you're doing say talent development or more RSRs and stuff, you've got the kids that have been through the program quite a lot, and they would have attended a lot of those sessions, and the discovery, maybe a lot of race-led coaching scenarios, just to make them think on their feet, whether maybe it's a positioning thing coming into a sprint, which direction's the wind, what group you're with, do you know who your opponents are, etc., etc., or are you doing a team time trial, how are you going to work together? So yeah, questions, I just do a lot of questioning with them, which obviously then moves into reviewing how a session may have been, or how they come across to do that. So yeah, otherwise it's the same as Joanne and Mark, really. But also there's many a time that you screw up the plan and it goes out the window.
Just really curious. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry. I think it's really important as well that if you work with a group regularly, like a DC or an RSR, they've ridden together, they know each other, and they're quite comfortable about speaking in front of each other. Whereas if you've got a group that maybe only get together once a month or have never ridden with each other, they're very sort of apprehensive about saying what they think, or letting their feelings be known. They can't criticise each other, they can't give feedback. So again, you've got to change and adapt your behaviour and step in and step out as sort of almost dictated to by the group, really.
So where does this come from? That's what I'm really interested in, about the approach, that that adaptability, the need to coach and be adaptable and tap into the needs of the group. What do you think? Should we go with Joe? What
do you mean, as in where does it come from in my head, or like?
Yeah, how's it influenced by your philosophy?
Yeah, see, I said in the other group, I was like, I know what my philosophy is to do with my research from uni, but I have no idea what it is with my coaching. So I think it's probably just like one of the words that came up, I was with Keith in the original group, and I was like, well, he used the word that I was talking about, and he used potential as the word, like you're interested in the potential of the group. And I suppose where you want the group to get the best out of the session, like, each session is not a carbon copy of the other one, because that is not the way to learn anything. So I suppose it's just about the fact that you want people to learn. Like, I like seeing people master a skill. So you need to, if they're not getting it one way, you need to change the way you're describing it, or change the way, ask them questions about it to try and help them understand it, to get it. So I suppose it's about the fact that you want the wanting someone to get it. I'm not just like kind of trying to preach to people who don't want to listen to me. They're there because most of the time anyway, I don't have to deal with school kids who actually don't want to be there, and they're like, yeah, you're on your bike today, and I'm so yeah.
Sue, is that the same for you?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm very much out of the box kind of thinker. So I know with some kids, and with, say, the youth A and B, they get fed a lot at school all the time. It's in the box. This is your GCSE, or this is what you're moving to. And I just find sometimes they get a little bit just stuck in the box. So by trying to get them to think out of the box, you can see them kind of go, oh yeah, okay, there's another way to do this. It doesn't necessarily have to be this one. And yeah, I guess that's a style. Yeah,
absolutely. And say Mark. Sorry, I've ended up chairing this. I'm taking off you, Joe.
Yeah, no, a little bit. Probably quite similar to Joanne and Sue. I spent 22 years in the Air Force, so every single day of my life was very, very structured, very routine, but challenged on a daily basis almost. And like Sue, if you, from past experience, I was a windsurfing coach as well. So from past experience, if you try and take that to teenage kids, so they're on the Olympic sailing podium program, or even adults, if you try and take that structure, they're just not interested. So like Sue, you've got to sort of almost bypass the rules or the norm, and get them thinking. And if, like Sue said, if you can get it to click another way, that's often more successful than this is what the book says, so you must go by it.
Yeah, brilliant. Just close the room, so we're going to head back shortly, but really, really good conversation there. Really Yeah, good to see. So Joe, your challenge now is to go away and really be able to articulate your coaching philosophy. You know, in
That's
line
the
with
problem. I was like, I said all the stuff, and then Keith was like, "Oh yeah, potential," and I was like, "I've written it down now." But like, I was like, "That's the word I was looking for," because he described it, and then I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." I'm not very good at articulating. It's probably there in the back of my head, but someone has to ask the right questions or say the thing that clicks in my head. Like you're saying about thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
My brain isn't so.
We'll come to that. We'll come to that next about that reflective practice that might be able to help you in that regard. I'm sure you do lots of that at uni. What are you studying?
Oh no, I'm finished now.
Hello all, welcome back. Hopefully you've all enjoyed another conversation with fellow coaches. Certainly found it really interesting with Mark, Sue, and Mark, Sue, and Joanne. Just talking about the adaptability of behaviours. That's something I was keen to not cover because don't want to give all the answers away. But that is the nature of what we'd hope to see in coaching, is that you don't nail your colours to the mast in terms of you're an autocrat or you're a democrat, or you use guided discovery or self-check or various pedagogical approaches. That you use a variety of them depending on the audience, depending on the need. So it's really interesting to hear that conversation, and then to try and make the links between the philosophy and how that's influenced those behaviours. So another thing that we can use to shape our behaviours and to understand them a little bit better is reflective practice. I'm going to hand over to Trish. And the reason we want to talk about this is because we talked about behaviours and threw it out there. What are the behaviours that we're going to see at your practice? Now, academic research says 80% of coaches cannot accurately recall their behaviours, which I find really interesting. You think, I do use a lot of questioning, and I do that, and then you're observed and you're using more like command instruction all the time. So it'd be really interesting. I don't know if it's something you'd fancy doing, just getting somebody to video your session and then just reviewing it and seeing where you come, seeing what you do. But I'm going to hand over to Trish to talk about how reflective practice can help us identify this. Sorry, can you see my screen? Why is that so?
We can see you, Robbie.
Oh, hello. Sorry, let me just, I was sharing my screen, and that I've just realised I was talking off a screen that you probably couldn't see then, so sorry about that.
Okay, over to me then. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all okay. It's kind of a bit of a whistle-stop tour this evening, isn't it? So I've probably got about 3 minutes to talk to you about the huge topic of reflection, self-reflection, reflective practice, and all of the other kinds of reflections that kind of sit within that. So you'd be pleased to know I'm not going to talk at you for too long. It's about acknowledging the fact that everyone is reflecting, engages in some certain amount of reflection throughout your day, throughout your working day, throughout your family day, and throughout most of the things that you do. So for us, this is really just thinking about going back to Keith's kind of message at the very beginning in the coaching heart, that sort of message around continuous learning. And certainly in both of the sessions that I've been in, the breakout rooms, the people that I've been with have been talking around that continuous development and always wanting to learn more and develop. So that reflective practice is essentially how we use reflection and self-reflection as a tool to really support our coaching practice. So it is about learning from others. It is a key factor in improving your learner experience. It's shared within a number of different people, so a lot of people can contribute to that process with you. It's about tackling things head on. Some things may be slightly uncomfortable and you may feel a bit vulnerable if someone's videoing your session or you're asking for input into your actual coaching practice. It should be ongoing throughout your career as a coach, and it should then help you form an action plan for continuing your professional development and identifying what you need to do next if you want to create some sort of change in your behavior. A little bit of a confliction there in that some of our behaviors are around our philosophy, but there are also some of our behaviors that we can actually change and improve our professional coaching practice. So essentially, I think it's around the opportunity to reflect tends to come from some sort of trigger and experience. It could be an interview, it could be a conversation at work. And for us, the example we want to use obviously is within a coaching session. So quite often you kind of get to the end of a session, it may have gone incredibly well and you just feel absolutely elated, and you're on your bike ride home or your car journey home, you've got the music blasting because it's just all gone so well, everything's perfect. And you don't necessarily start to unpick what it was that was so perfect about the session. You're just feeling on a real high and get home and have some dinner. Alternatively, you might have a pretty bad experience. You thought you'd planned the best session in the world. Nobody engaged. People just sort of completely switched off. Riders didn't really develop as you expected. And sometimes then on that car journey home, maybe the more negative experience is about thinking, what happened? So I suppose a really simplistic way of looking at it is the what, so what, and now what. Okay, so the what is the riders didn't engage in my session at all. So what? Well, what influence did that have in the session? That meant they didn't progress. That meant everyone else disengaged because a few people kind of weren't really involved in the session. How did it make me feel? So for you as a coach, how are you feeling about going back to the next session? So some key kind of questions for you around your own behaviours there. But most importantly, I think really is the what next. So instead of just going home, having a quick cup of tea and maybe not sleeping very well that night, it's sort of more around what can you do about it and how can you affect that change in your practice, whether that's a very small adjustment to exactly the same session, whether it's a slightly different environment or some different riders the following week, or actually it's about picking up some books, doing some learning, watching some videos, going to work with some other coaches. Perhaps it's actually about getting the video out and getting the club to actually video your session and get some feedback. We very often use video for technique analysis, but it's quite a challenge to actually get a lot of coaches to start using video for their own coach development. Certainly within my club, it's a tool that we use a lot and pretty early on in coaching. So it kind of becomes part of the day-to-day coaching activity. And it's a really valuable tool for you to take back and even just look at your body language and the things that you've said in that session and how you said them. So for me, and I'm conscious I'm sort of wrapping this up really quite quickly, what I'd like to do is to ask you all just in the next breakout room, if you could think about a time when you have reflected on your own behaviour and not just gone home and put it to bed and had a cup of tea, but actually where you have made a very positive decision to write that down, or to make a phone call to someone the next day, or to go online and do some research, or to watch some videos. So if you could just think about one time, we've got on there currently reflect on your practice, but if you could think about one occasion where you actually reflected on an incident that then changed your coaching practice or your coaching behaviours. So it seems like quite a big question, but it could be something really very, very small.
No.
Okay.
I'm just going to. Oh, sorry, a little bit of feedback there. I'm not sure why that went so noisy. I've just muted you, Trish. So before I do that, I'm very conscious I do have Keith Sharp on the call. So Keith coined a phrase that you can't win a medal if you're late to the start line, which it was to address, starting some meetings late and not always finishing them on time. So I'm mindful. I said this was 7 to 8. If you do need to leave, no problem at all. But if you'd like to engage in the last breakout room, then we are going to do that now. Just going to quickly cover kind of some of the takeaway tasks about developing your philosophy, developing your reflective practice, and finding critical friends to support that reflective practice. The next one is on the 24th of November. It's around about care. So we've hopefully got a speaker from Liverpool, John Moores, to talk about care and coaching. We're going to focus with the focus being on children and finding the challenge point for them. And then just as I said before, there is something to support your development in terms of behaviours and make developing engaging practices available on British Cycling Learning. So hopefully a few of you are going to stick around for the last discussion point. Thank you. If you do have to leave, thank you for joining tonight. Lovely of you to give over your evening for an hour. But yeah, I will open the next breakout room. So let me just recreate. Okay, and I'm opening all rooms. See you shortly.
Hello.
Hello all.
Hi Bobby.
Hiya.
Right, who's first in the alphabet? Chris, you're the chair.
that backfired on me then, Barry.
Oh, Barry, sorry. No,
I did the first one and Chris was a participant, so you chose well, Bobby.
Right, good.
I haven't wrote down what the question is. Reflecting on
a key incident. Yeah, a key incident that's influenced that you've reflected on, that's influenced your coaching practice.
I think, I mean, I'll just start it by saying, I think every coach reflects. For me, it's one of the hardest things that I find, because it's not something I do well. I don't consciously, it doesn't sit in my psyche very well. But to other people, I'm told that I do reflect, because I'm always kind of trying to work out what went well, when went bad, you know, how. And sometimes, because a lot of what I do is working with children, it's their behaviour. Like, you know, did that work well? You know, I mean, you get some with learning difficulties, or they're just tired, they've had too many Haribos and they're running around wild. So there's various tools, and I suppose my evaluation, my method is kind of being a granddad and an uncle to 15. I kind of just think of how it would work within my family. Did it go well? Did we achieve what we set out to do? If not, why not? And I just kind of ask questions around it. I always, other coaches that take part, I always kind of have an evaluation session with them. And as kind of lead coach, I'm kind of asking them how they felt it went. I don't often find someone evaluating me, and sometimes that's not even me. So I'm not very good at that, and it's something I consciously always try to make better. So looking back, I don't have any single issue that I can pull out of. Well, perhaps one. There was a young kid with ADHD who turned up for a session and wasn't going well. I had to get a parent to sort of overwatch while I just got the rest of the class to just keep warm for a couple of minutes. And I literally took him away from the embarrassment of he couldn't do something. And we went away to one side in his, you know, everyone could see where we were. And we just sat on the grass and I just had a minute with him. And we just kind of worked it through. And I made him bring his bike as well. So we just got him to ride around me and just feel content and friendly with his bike again, and reintroduced him in. So I suppose I've just answered my own question.
It's a great example. It's a great look. Things like that, where you know you have an outlet, a child that comes over that needs that one-to-one support, and I've had that before, and I've gone away and I've gone, I need to plan that into my session. Like if I'm doing something specific and someone's really struggling, how am I going to change it? Change the activity, use steps or other ways to develop it to include them, or buy that time to do that one-to-one. So I think that's a good example. What about yourself, Helen?
So I am about to do my level 2 coaching course. So I actually don't have any examples because I'm going straight into level 2 because I'm a teacher. So I've got so many examples of this in teaching.
Use teaching, that's fun.
Yeah, well, it is teaching. It's just practical rather than words. And I have to say that reflection is something that is really built into teaching practice nowadays. It's something that we're encouraged to do a lot, and it often is something that is incredibly difficult to do on your own by yourself, and it kind of needs you have to learn how to do it. I think if I'm honest, I think everyone benefits from going through the process with someone else, having that feedback and using that feedback as a kind of prompt for what kind of things do you have to think about, what actually happened, because I know things happen so quickly you kind of miss stuff, and most people react in very positive ways, but being aware of how you're reacting, how you change the way in which you're kind of carrying out instructions or tasks, it can be quite innate, and actually it's more useful to know it and it to be explicit, because then you can really work on those kind of minor adjustments, which can be, and it's very difficult to do that if you're not very aware of what you're doing. But if I'm honest, it never stops. It carries on. I mean, like was said earlier, it's about constant development. There is unfortunately always room for improvement, which feels like a bit of a never-ending task. But yeah, I think in terms of my reflection, a lot of the stuff that I experience in classrooms is about managing behaviours and attitudes. That's the main times, because for the most
had an
part.
absolute horror show? Have you had a a real reflective incident? One thing that really helped shape your teaching? I mean, I know there's a lot of things in teaching. I used to work in a school, so it's a tough gig.
Yeah, it is. There was one incident actually. Well, I mean, I don't know that there was much reflection aside from. No, that was quite a big deal. Actually, there was a punch up in my classroom, and triggered by some bullying that had been going on. And it was a really interesting case because the class itself was a very difficult class. It was a mixed school, but this class was kind of like 80% boys, 20% girls. And the dynamic of the classroom as a result of that, also there were two sets of girls who didn't like each other. So it was some really negative feelings in that classroom. And I think that and a number of other like sort of circumstances in classrooms has made me realize how important building that relationship is, not just you yourself as the kind of person in charge, but also the kids themselves and actually getting kids to work together. And I think that maybe we don't always use that opportunity to get students and what do you call them in cycle coaching? Kids?
Riders.
Riders, there you go.
Kids,
like I said, to get them to work together. And I think that also applies in adults, because I volunteer at a local cycle club, but it's a female cycling club, and our main focus is about improving diversity in cycling. And we get a lot of women who have maybe previously cycled and then have gotten back into it, or even just picked up a bicycle for new, and started to learn. And the main thing there seems to be making sure that women feel safe, and that again is that relationships. And I think I've learned from teaching kids that actually so much of that is applicable to adults as well, but you do it without being patronizing.
Just really mindful of time. Sorry to put in Helen. Just really keen to. No, you're absolutely fine. No, really interested. Barry, really keen to hear about your critical incident and practice.
Yeah, no one particular incident speaks, but one thing I do practice is when I deliver a session, I do come back and update my notes for the session plans after delivering a session. Yeah, one thing I've learned in the industry is at the end of a project, we do lessons learned, and they tend to just get filed away and no one takes any action from them. So actually getting your feedback straight away and then making sure you're not making the same mistakes, it's just fairly sound practice, and just stops you making the same mistakes. Not got a particularly good example for anything behavioural, but that's just more sort of technical way that I behave.
Yeah, I think Barry is a very good point there. I mean, you're working on a technique, or whatever discipline it is, and it's not worked, and it could be down to how you've put it within your session, and going back and changing that to make it work better. I think it's very
and even that goes into your own mind. Just the fact that you've gone back and written it down, it does actually help you deliver it next time.
Yeah.
I've got one minute left here, but
it's one other last point for me is I think sometimes when you're sort of sticking your chin out for these kind of things, it's remembering that this is about making you a better coach. It's not a criticism of you. It's remembering that this is about making you better next time.
Yeah.
It's not about somebody literally wanting to knock your nose off because they don't like you.
No, absolutely. I'm just going to very quickly share. So my critical incident was I used to coach a women's football team, and when I first started coaching them, I joined the team, and they all talked about wanting to win the league. So I thought they really, if I mentioned about kind of winning games and talked in kind of that competitive element that would appeal to them. But then when I started talking about winning, they felt a lot of pressure. And in conversation with them when we didn't win the league, was that they felt that pressure, and they wanted us to focus more on the process and the social element of cycling. Hello all, welcome back. Hope you've enjoyed the last breakout room there. So sorry, the group. I really enjoyed listening to Helen, Barry, and sorry, there was one other person. I've completely forgot your name, but really good conversation. I was just saying about my critical incident, just to share with everybody whilst you're here, was about when I coached a women's football team, and they were when I joined them, they talked a lot about they talked about wanting to win the game, so I took that as they were quite a performance-orientated, competitive team, and I started, we started talking about winning the league and what they needed to do that, and when it was coming from me, they felt a lot of pressure. And then, in conversation with them after the season, it was they wanted to focus more on the process and the social side of things. So that was what we based the next season. All my communication around was based on that. We did actually go on to win the league without ever talking about going on to win the league, and that was a real learning point for me for making sure that your behaviours and your outlook and how you're approaching things is what the athletes want to receive. So that really influenced my philosophy and my behaviours for coaching a women's football team. I was at the same time coaching a men's football team, and it was completely different. They wanted to talk about winning, and it was all about competition. So I had to be able to shift my behaviours, as we've talked about on the previous slides. So I'm just going to ask a couple of really quick polls, because this is the first type of this delivery. So I just want to ask a quick question, just for a bit of feedback. This style of delivery, hearing a little bit of content from somebody, and then going off and having a little chat about it. Do you find it beneficial? Do you like it? Did you enjoy it? So I just want to ask, be completely honest, because if you don't enjoy it, if you didn't like it, we don't want to do it again. But if you did enjoy it, then we'll continue with this and develop it. And we really like to hear your feedback, which you can pop into the chat. So hopefully you can see the poll on the screen. So just vote. I think we've got the majority of people voting. Great feedback there. Okay, so I'm just going to share those results. So 100% of people have said they like this style, which is really good to see. So I've got one more question, which is just about the the next ones. So you've obviously heard from different people. So would you like more content delivered to you? Would you like more breakout rooms? Would you like more opportunities to engage as a large group? So maybe less breakout rooms, but more opportunities to interact, whiteboards, or do you think the balance was just about right? So tell us what you think, and we'll, like I say, really do appreciate your feedback. Okay, so I'm really pleased with the feedback here. I'm glad you like the balance, because it was kind of a concept that was based on the feedback that we'd had about previous webinars about more opportunities to engage with other coaches. So you can see generally the balance, people like the balance, a couple wanting more opportunities to engage a large group, which we can certainly look at. But that's great. Thank you so much for your feedback, and once again for your attendance tonight, to Keith, Catherine and Trish for delivering, albeit short bits of content. So as I've just mentioned before, your challenge now, I'm just going to share in the chat just the UK coaching. There's an article on UK coaching just about developing your philosophy. Some of you talked about having it in your practice for teaching, or your level 3 coaches, where you do have to write down your own philosophy. So I want to, I think the UK coaching article is really, it's pretty good just for starting to shape that. I would really encourage you to start, a couple of people mentioned, reflection is kind of ongoing. Did it go right? Did it go well? Just a reminder that reflection is really about that critical incident that really shapes you, your coaching practice, and really develops you as a coach, as a person. So start to look for the, don't go creating incidents, of course. We'll look for those incidents, those opportunities to really develop what you do. Really encourage you to read up on reflective practice, and do, really importantly, evolve others. So it's really hard to reflect properly by yourself, because you're always, it just goes round and round in your head, but somebody else can give a different viewpoint. So find those critical friends, might be a work colleague, might be a coaching colleague, someone in your club, someone in your region, and I'm sure you'll start to develop. So like I say, the next one, so similar format then, because it looks like you've enjoyed it. We're discussing care. So and we're going to be looking at coaching children. So I'm going to have a different panel of people to deliver a little bit of content, and you'll have the same opportunities to interact with each other. And lastly, again, about that engaging ride as well. So that's available for $6.99 on BC Learning, as are other courses. For awareness, we're doing from Thursday, we've got 3 sessions that are first aid refreshers. So an annual first aid refresher. It's £10 with an expert from First Aid Borders, and who's specifically going to focus on both refreshing your skills, because many people have been inactive this year, but also delivering first aid during COVID. So yeah, worth attending if you fancy a first aid refresher. So just going to quickly go to the questions. If you need to leave now, you're more than welcome to, but just to see if there's any questions that have come through or any comments. So yeah, Joe, we did discuss talk about that in terms of the volume of content for a single hour, and it is quite, you know, it is quite a lot. So the idea with the coaching conversations is to cover a few topics in brief, and for you to now take that, hopefully to pique interest and go away, read up on it a little bit more. But maybe we'll try and limit the amount that we deliver next time. So please see the positive comments. Thank you, and do enjoy yourselves. Lloyd, about the missing piece on reflection is your own expectations. So yeah, really, really important. You really ought to have an idea what you think success might look like. You know, and how do you find that out? What do you know that success looks like? So we can look to the sport, and this is really important to look to the sport. What are the best riders doing? What's Teo doing? What's what's Van der Poel doing? What are they all doing at the top of the sport? Can I take any nuggets of what they're doing and build them into my practice? You know, that's you've got to know what good looks like, and that comes from conversation, from going and observing other coaches and things, and engaging with the community. So yeah, really, really good point. So I can't, Keith, I've gone 15 minutes over. I can't believe you're still here. I thought it was a hard deadline. Thank you for sticking around. And I'm going to wrap it up there. I can't see too many questions, but I can see loads of positive comments. I'm really pleased you enjoyed the format. I look forward to engaging with you again. And yeah, thanks again for your time. Thanks, Keith, Trish, and Catherine. Wishing you all the best.